In the previous module, we've learned how to successfully collect the data. Now the fun part, how to manipulate this data, segment it, and make actionable insights based on all the data that we've gathered, whether it's from your own collections as first party or the third-party collections. In this module, we'll learn how to leverage all the intelligence about your data, segment it, slice, dice the data in order to make sure that when you engage with the user, you have the best intelligence and the best understanding of how your customer behaves on a segment level. But first, let's take a step back and understand what challenges usually the merchant has when they segment the data. Most of the merchants, when they collect the data, they sit still and they don't know how to move forward with this data. They access a lot of data, however, they don't understand the foundation of successful segments. The problem with modern advertising is the fact that users right now behave very differently. Each of the segment requires different approach in marketing, different channel for advertising, and different promotion in order to interact with. These differences, when it comes to the user level and the different segments, creates a big problem for the merchant. The problem is how to navigate these different segments in a different fashion and engage with these different segments with multiple or different ways that maximize the potential of this segment to convert or make a purchase. So the real essence of a successful engagement is your ability as a brand to make successful segments and make sure that you're classifying your users based on some attributes so that you can engage with the user accordingly. This module will help you segment your users, slice and dice them, and make sure that you understand how your users behave and how to build the best engagement strategy at the latter stage. So first of all, we'll learn the segments and the different classification of your data, how to build a custom segment, what are the different attributes for segments, and then how to move forward into making actionable audiences that you can start to interact with, and how this serves as a foundation of successful engagement. So now back to ConvertedIn dashboard. You can access all your segments and start to build your own segments from the people section. Let's take an overview. The segmentation engine in ConvertedIn actually helps you to classify your users based on preset templates or customize your own segments. The segmentation methodology that ConvertedIn uses for its template is based on a very widely known segmentation method called the RFM. RFM stands for Recency, Frequency, and Monetary. These classification criteria help you to segment your users based on the recency, which is how recent the user has interacted with your brand, frequency, which is how frequent and how many times this user specifically work or interacted with your brand, and monetary, how much the user is spending, and segment the user based on money attributes. All these different combinations help you to craft bigger understanding and in-depth understanding of your users based on these three things. The RFM model stands as the foundation of segmenting users for most of the e-commerce stores. ConvertedIn helps you to segment your users leveraging the RFM module to make sure that you understand how the users interact with your brand. There is another thing you need to learn about segments. When you think about segments, you can think of segments in terms of what happened, so how your users actually interacted with your brand. For example, how many people have spent more than $1,000 in my brand? So this is something that happened. Second part is what's happening right now. You can segment your users based on the activity that is happening on spot real time. For example, who are the people that is adding products to the cart right now? Who are the people who are viewing specific content or category? These are actions that are happening on relatively present time. And the third and most interesting part is predictive segments. How can I predict my users based on interactions or some kind of information or intelligence that I've gathered about my user so that I can predict the next possible action for my users? This is the fun part, and this is where you can start to make proactive engagements with these segments. So let's see how these interactions on all these segments that we've discussed work in ConvertedIn. So when we hover on People section, you'll have an overview of some of the most important templates or segments predefined by the system. For example, who are your top customers? Who are your active customers? Unsteady customer? Zero purchase customer? Or maybe the potential lost customers, which is a segment that is very important to make sure that you're interacting with the users who may churn from your brand. So when we go in the segment section, you will have templates for the most widely used segments in most of the e-commerce. For example, thrifty shoppers, one-time segments, weekend shoppers, and classification based on some money attributes such as people who've spent within a specific range. All these segments give you instant information about your user base and make you on top of what my customer are actually doing and what segments are actually generating most of the money for me. So let's take another example, which is very important. Let's say I'd like to create my own segments because I don't want to just rely on templates. So when we go to the creation of new segments, you will have segmentation criteria that you can actually start to slice and dice your data based on very complex attribution. When we look at the segment criteria, we'll be able to find multiple ways you can segment, slice, dice your data so that you reach the most important segment for your brand. In ConvertedIn, you have multiple criteria that you can segment your users with. For example, order criteria, number of orders, total orders value, last order date, and so on. And then you have user interaction criteria, which from the previous module we've seen that you can track the user instant behavior on the event level, whether it's page view, view content, add to cart, initiate checkout, or purchase. You can actually start to segment the users based on the behaviors they're taking inside your website. So for example, now I can actually group the people who've added to cart and then start to retarget them at a later stage through social media, SMS, email, whatsoever. The key here is to make sure that you're grouping people based on specific criteria, and that's what ConvertedIn helps you to do. And then you have the campaign criteria. In the campaign criteria, it's a segmentation method based on the interaction that the user does with your SMS, email, or WhatsApp. So for example, all the people who click specific link from the SMS, or all the people who've opened email. This is very important because you would like to start to make interactions with users based on how they behaved with this specific engagement. Let's take an example. Imagine that I send 10,000 emails for all my user base, and then only 1,000 users open the email. And then the 9,000 have not opened the email or they don't prefer to interact through the email. Now the 1,000 people are the users who I would like to engage with them through emails because that's their preferred channel of engagement. ConvertedIn helps you to segment the users based on the activity and based on the interaction they make through the different channels. So people who prefer email, SMS, or WhatsApp can actually receive the engagement through their preferred channel. Now let's take an actual example. I would like to segment all the users who have bought more than 3 orders from my brand, but they haven't made any purchase in the past 1 month. These are users who've interacted with my brands multiple times and they have a huge possibility to be churning. So I need to proactively group these people and start to engage with them. Let's see how we can do that. So for example, I need the number of orders is greater than 3 orders. That's the first condition. And then I'd like to have last order date is before 1 month from now, which is, let's say, October 15th. And let's name this segment high value customer, and then check the number of people who share this criteria. And you'll see instantly ConvertedIn provided you with an estimate of the number in this segment, which is 626 people who exhibit this behavior. So now as a brand, I know for a fact that there is 626 people who've actually bought from me more than 3 times and they haven't made any purchase in the last 30 days. How to leverage this we'll explore at the module of engagement, but right now you can see that I gathered and grouped information about a specific segment to make sure that I make personalized engagement at a later stage for this specific segment. Brands who cannot group their users effectively based on certain attributes, based on certain segments, fall into the trap of making bulk advertising. Bulk advertising is a problem that most of the marketeers or brands fall into when they do not have a specific way to segment the users. So instead of making personalized engagement based on a segment, they just go with a specific message to all the user base without any variation depending on the user segment. This makes a problem with the relevance of the ad, which makes you, as a merchant, advertise in a bulk way without any personalization to this specific segment, and accordingly, you'll find yourself going off message most of the time. Any successful e-commerce right now rely on a segmentation method in order to make sure that they segment their users effectively and make sure that they create relevance when it comes to the engagement at the latter stage. So you as a brand need to be careful on the way you treat the data, segment them, and make sure that you're making the best effort to know how your users are interacting with your brand and how to leverage this information to create very personalized engagement. Now you've successfully created segments and made sure that all your data are segmented based on different attributes. The next logical question would be how to leverage this information and segments to engage with my users on social media, SMS, email, push notifications, or WhatsApp. Let's take the first step, which is how to use these segments in creating lookalikes so that you can acquire users that are similar to specific segments in your social media and search engine. As you may know, social media is a very powerful method in order to engage with your users. You can add an additional step, which is educating the social media about the target users that you would like to acquire. For example, I know that these are my top paying customer or top paying segment, and then I would like to get a lookalike or people who are similar to the top paying customers to exhibit them my products or to show them my products. This will help you as a brand to go and target people that are actually similar to your best performing customers in your brand. Having the ability to move from segments to a lookalike audience is crucial for big e-commerce, especially those who have data and they do not leverage it to acquire users more effectively. In social media, there are multiple ways you can create an audience to advertise to. One of them is lookalikes. Lookalikes is a very important method that most of the e-commerce right now use to help them acquire users that they know for a fact that serves their best user profile. Let's take this into an example with ConvertedIn. Here, ConvertedIn groups all the customers into one segment. Now, these are all the people who've bought an item from my brand. Ideally, what I would like to do is create a lookalike and go to the different social media and try to acquire users who exhibit similar interests and similar behavior similar to this segment or my customers. So basically, when you go on ConvertedIn and click Send Campaign, you can have it on social media ads, which will create immediately an audience for you that you can make either a lookalike or make a retargeting campaign for these users. As you can see, in order to do this manually, we'll have multiple problems. One is associated with the aggregation of the data. Second, to keep all these segments updated. And third, to make the sync between your data hub and the different social channels. This usually is a problematic move for most of the merchants, and usually they need an automation engine to segment the data and sync this data to the different social channels and search engine. Now let's move to the audience section in ConvertedIn. ConvertedIn groups all the different audiences for you into one single place. As we explained, you can move from a segment to an audience to a lookalike so that you can start to acquire users based on specific criteria. When we go in the audiences, you will find all the different audiences ready for you to create a lookalike. So you're not only retargeting those specific users, but actually you can go and acquire users based on the attributes that you've specified within this specific audience. For example, I can take all the people who have purchased 3 times or more and haven't purchased in the last 30 days and retarget them with a specific message. For example, we miss you. Here is a 10% promo code for your next purchase. Or I can specify a specific segment and start to move from this segment into acquiring users who share similar interest or behavior, which is the lookalike. Any segments and any audience here are interchangeable, and you can move from segments to audience and then from an audience to a lookalike. This will help you to navigate through the different audiences more effectively without the need of relying on a lot of applications and data hubs in order to do these processes. Okay, now let's take all this into one big example and see how we can implement this from ConvertedIn, from segmenting users, creating an audience, and then creating a lookalike. Let's start with creating a new segment, which are the people who haven't made a purchase or made a 0 purchase until now. I would like to interact with those people so that I can induce them to make the first purchase. So let's take the order value or total number of orders is equal to 0. So the system now specified that there is 15,449 users who have made a 0 purchase or 0 number of orders. Let me call this segment 0 purchase segment. When I create this segment, it will be automatically populated to my segment base, and that's the 0 purchase segment. Now let's take it to the next step. I'd like to make a social media campaign. Now I will have the specification for which social channel I would like to create an audience for based on this segment. And the system will ask me, would you like to engage with this specific user as a retargeting, or create a lookalike and acquire users based on these specific attributes that I have specified? For this specific use case, the 0 purchase customer, it's more convenient to retarget them and make sure that they initiate their first purchase. So you can choose one of these 2 options depending on the strategy. Creating a lookalike for this specific segment will make you go and target people who share similar interest or behavior based on this specific segment. In this case, it would not make sense to make a lookalike for the 0 purchase customers. What is more relevant is to go for people who actually made a purchase from your website and create a lookalike to acquire users based on this specific selection. So let's go for the retarget this segment. When you go to create campaign, now the system will take you into the campaign setup for this specific user. Now you can see that you can start interacting with this specific segment seamlessly without having to worry about how to group this information or segments and start to engage with them throughout the different social channels. To recap what we've just discussed in this module, we understood the importance of having a segmentation engine for your brand to know how to group your users based on specific attributes or selection criteria. And then we understood how to seamlessly move from segments to audience to lookalike audiences to help you retarget or acquire users based on information that you already own. Having a seamless segmentation engine that allows you to interact with the different data that you have, slice, dice them, group them into specific criteria, will serve you as the foundation of successful engagement. And that's what we'll discover in the next module.